The stars in the Kelthera sector burned bright against the endless black of space. Among those stars, fear had a name: Warlord Vexthu. For 20 cycles, the massive reptilian warrior had crushed every enemy in his path. His red scales bore the scars of 1,000 battles. His fleet had conquered 17 star systems. No one had ever defeated him. No one had even come close. Taemin stood in the engine room of the small Earthship called the Horizon's Edge. He wiped grease from his hands and stared at the display screen. The distress signal blinked in urgent red patterns. Someone needed help. Someone was dying. Captain Dong-hyun, are you seeing this? Taemin spoke into his communicator. On the bridge, Captain Dong-hyun studied the same signal. She was an older woman with gray streaking through her black hair. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught her caution. But it had also taught her something else. Sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks. I see it, Taemin. It's coming from a mining colony. She paused. We're not supposed to be in this sector. They're asking for help, Dr. Hana said quietly. She stood beside the captain, her fingers dancing across the science console. The signal says they're under attack. Captain Dong-hyun made her decision. She had always made the hard choices. That was why Earth trusted her with their exploration missions. Set course for the colony. Maximum speed. The Horizon's Edge was not a warship. It carried no weapons beyond basic defensive shields. Earth had sent it to explore, to learn, to make friends among the stars. The ship held only 12 crew members. They were scientists, engineers, and dreamers. Not soldiers. Minho, the young pilot, guided the ship through space with steady hands. Captain, we'll reach the colony in 40 minutes. 40 minutes felt like forever. The crew worked in tense silence. Sujin monitored all frequencies, trying to learn more about what was happening. Ji-woo prepared the medical bay just in case. Taemin checked the engines 3 times, making sure they would not fail. When they finally arrived, the sight made them all freeze. The mining colony was burning. Pieces of destroyed ships floated in the darkness, and surrounding it all was a fleet that blocked out the stars. Massive warships, each one bristling with weapons. At the center floated the largest ship any of them had ever seen. That's the Bloodfang, Sujin whispered. Her face had gone pale. That's Vexthu's flagship. Everyone knew the stories. Vexthu did not negotiate. He did not show mercy. He took what he wanted and destroyed everything else. Captain, they've spotted us, Minho said. Fear crept into his young voice. They're locking on. A beam of brilliant blue light shot from the Bloodfang. It wrapped around the Horizon's Edge like a giant fist. The ship shuddered and groaned. Taemin grabbed the wall to keep from falling. They've caught us in a tractor beam, Captain Dong-hyun said. Her voice stayed calm even as the ship began pulling toward the massive warship. Everyone stay calm. Maybe we can talk to them. Dr. Hana touched the captain's shoulder. The stories say Vexthu has never let anyone go. Then we'll be the first. Captain Dong-hyun straightened her uniform. Prepare for boarding. Don't resist. Don't give them a reason to shoot. The Horizon's Edge was pulled into the belly of the Bloodfang like a fish caught in a net. Metal clamps locked onto the hull. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the walls. They were breaking in. Taemin stayed in the engine room. He watched the door, his mind racing. He was not a fighter. He was an engineer. But engineers solved problems. Maybe somehow he could solve this one too. The door exploded inward. Draxian soldiers poured through. They were massive creatures, twice the size of any human. Their scales ranged from deep crimson to black. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. And they moved with the confidence of warriors who had never lost. Taemin raised his hand slowly. I'm not armed. The soldiers ignored him. They grabbed him roughly and dragged him toward the bridge. All around the ship, the same thing was happening to his crewmates. In minutes, all 12 humans stood on their own bridge, surrounded by alien warriors. Then Vexthu entered. He had to duck to fit through the doorway. Standing at his full height, he towered over everyone. Old scars crisscrossed his red scales. His eyes were yellow and cold. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am Warlord Vexthu. This vessel is now mine. You are now mine. He looked at each human in turn. Which one of you commands? Captain Dong-hyun stepped forward. She barely reached his chest, but she met his eyes without flinching. I am Captain Dong-hyun of the Earthship Horizon's Edge. We came because we received a distress call. Vexthu tilted his head. The gesture looked almost curious. You came to help strangers? In this sector? In my territory? We didn't know it was your territory. We just knew someone needed help. For a long moment, Vexthu stared at her. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. The sound was harsh and bitter. Help, you came to help. He leaned down until his face was level with hers. Your ship has no weapons. You have no fleet backing you. You are 12 soft creatures in a tin shell. And you came to help strangers fight me? Captain Dong-hyun's lips twitched into a small smile. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound pretty stupid. Several Draxian soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Prisoners were not supposed to make jokes. They were supposed to beg or cry or fight. They were supposed to show fear. Vexthu straightened. He looked at his second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Krell. What are these creatures? Humans, my lord. From a world far from here. We have no records of them in our databases. They are unknown. Unknown. Vexthu paced in front of the crew. His claws clicked on the metal floor. I have conquered 17 systems. I have faced warriors from 100 worlds. But I have never seen creatures like you. He stopped in front of Taemin. You. What were you doing when we boarded? Taemin swallowed hard. I was in the engine room. Why did you not run to your captain? Why did you not try to escape? There was nowhere to run, and the engines needed to be monitored. If they failed while we were caught in your tractor beam, the ship would have torn apart. Vexthu's eyes narrowed. You stayed at your post even knowing you would be captured? It was my job. Another long silence. Then Vexthu turned to Krell. Take them to the holding cells. All of them, alive. Krell's expression showed surprise. My lord, I know what we usually do. Vexthu's voice carried an edge of warning. But these humans are interesting. I want to study them. I want to understand what kind of madness makes creatures this weak venture into the void to help strangers. As the soldiers dragged them away, Taemin looked back at the bridge. He saw Vexthu standing alone, staring at the small Earthship docked inside his massive warship. The Warlord looked confused. And confusion, Taemin thought, was better than immediate execution. In the holding cells deep inside the Bloodfang, the human crew gathered together. The cells were bare metal rooms with force fields instead of doors. Uncomfortable but not cruel. What do we do now? Minyo asked. He was trying to be brave, but his hands shook. Captain Dong-hyun sat down calmly. Now we wait. And we watch. And we learn. Learn what? Dr. Hana asked. Everything we can about our captors. The captain looked at Taemin. You're always watching, always analyzing. What did you notice? Taemin thought carefully. Their technology is advanced. More advanced than ours. But it's also rigid, specialized. Everything is built for one purpose, war. Can you use that? Maybe. If I can see more of their systems. Taemin looked at the force field, holding them prisoner. If they give me a chance, Captain Dong-hyun nodded slowly. Then we make ourselves useful. We show them we're worth more alive than dead. Outside their cells, the Bloodfang continued its journey through space. On the command bridge, Vexthu sat in his throne and thought about the strange, small creatures he had captured. In 20 cycles of conquest, nothing had confused him like this. Humans. Weak, soft, and armed with nothing but determination and strange smiles in the face of death. What were they? And why did they make him feel something he had not felt in years? Curiosity. 3 days passed inside the holding cells. The Draxian guards brought food and water twice daily. The food was bland but edible. The water tasted metallic but clean. The humans were prisoners, but they were not being tortured. That was something. Taemin spent those 3 days watching everything. He watched how the guards moved. He watched the patterns of light on the walls when the ship's engines fired. He watched the way heat rippled through the air vents. An engineer saw the world differently. Every system had patterns. Every pattern had weaknesses. The power conduits run too hot, he said on the 3rd evening. Dr. Hana looked up from where she sat. What? Look at the walls. See those discoloration marks? That's heat damage. Their power systems are inefficient. They waste energy as heat. Taemin pressed his hand against the wall. It's warm. It shouldn't be warm here. Captain Dong-hyun joined them. Can you do anything with that information? Maybe. If I could see their actual systems. If I had tools, he smiled sadly. Big ifs. The next morning, everything changed. The force field dropped without warning. Draxian guards entered, surrounding the humans with weapons ready. But they did not attack. Instead, they gestured for everyone to follow. They walked through corridors that stretched forever. The Bloodfang was enormous. Thousands of Draxian warriors lived and worked inside its metal walls. Everywhere the humans looked, they saw weapons, armor, and the trappings of war. This was not just a ship. It was a floating fortress. The guards brought them to a massive room filled with machinery. Pipes and cables ran everywhere like metal veins. The air vibrated with power. This was the engineering section. Vexthu stood in the center, his arms crossed. Beside him stood another Draxian, older and covered in even more scars than the Warlord. This one wore the markings of a chief engineer. You. Vexthu pointed at Taimin, the one who stayed at his post. Come here. Taimin stepped forward. His heart pounded, but he kept his face calm. My chief engineer Thrax says our power efficiency has decreased by 3% in the last cycle. We have searched for the problem but found nothing. Vexthu's yellow eyes bored into Taimin. You said you work with engines, prove it. Find the problem. And if I can't, Taimin asked, then you are useless. I do not keep useless things. The threat hung in the air like smoke. But beneath the threat, Taimin heard something else. A challenge. Vexthu was testing him. I'll need tools and access to your systems, Thrax growled. You want me to let an alien touch our ship's heart? You could sabotage everything. I could, Taimin agreed. But I won't. Because if I sabotage your ship while I'm on it, I die too. And I'm not ready to die. Vexthu made a sharp gesture. Give him basic tools. Watch him closely. If he tries anything, kill him and all his crew. The other humans tensed, but Captain Donghyun spoke calmly. Taimin is the best engineer I've ever known. If anyone can help you, he can. Thrax handed Taimin a set of Draxian tools. They were heavier than human tools built for larger hands. But tools were tools. Taimin could work with them. He started at the main power junction. The readings confused him at first. Draxian technology used different principles than Earth technology. But energy was energy. Physics was physics. The universe spoke the same language everywhere. After an hour of careful study, he found it. A series of microfractures in the primary conduit relay, too small to show on their sensors but large enough to bleed off energy as waste heat. Here, he pointed. The relay is damaged. It's small, but it's causing a cascade of inefficiency through the whole system. Thrax looked at his own scanner. His eyes widened. How did you see that? Our equipment did not detect it. Your equipment is looking for big problems. This is a small problem that grew over time. Taimin pulled out a human habit without thinking. He smiled. Sometimes the smallest crack brings down the biggest wall. Vexthu stepped closer. Can you fix it? Yes, but you'll need to shut down this section for 2 hours. And I'll need help. The relay is too heavy for me to lift alone. The Warlord looked at Thrax. The chief engineer nodded slowly. The human is right. This would take weeks to find on our own, maybe longer. Then do it. Vexthu turned to leave, then stopped. Captain Donghyun, your engineer has bought you all another day of life. Do not waste it. Over the next 2 hours, Taimin worked alongside Draxian engineers. They were suspicious at first, watching his every move. But as they worked, something changed. Taimin asked questions. He explained his reasoning. He treated them not as enemies, but as fellow engineers solving a problem together. Why do you build your relays this way? He asked Thrax. Because it is the traditional design. It has worked for 1,000 cycles, but it concentrates stress at these points. If you distributed the load like this, Taimin sketched a quick diagram. You would reduce stress by maybe 15%. Thrax studied the diagram. That is clever. Inefficient in the short term, but more durable long term. That's how humans think. We're not as strong as you. We're not as advanced. So we have to be creative. Dr. Hannah, watching from the side, began talking to other Draxian crew members. She asked about their biology, their medicine, their culture. At first they ignored her. But her genuine curiosity was infectious. Soon they were answering her questions. Sujin worked on understanding their language. She had a gift for communication, and she listened carefully to every word. The Draxian language was harsh and guttural, built for giving orders in battle. But underneath the harshness, she found patterns and meaning. Minho, young and restless, tried to lighten the mood. He made jokes even when the guards did not understand them. He smiled at everyone. Some Draxians found it annoying. Others found it strangely disarming. When the repair was complete, Taimin activated the new relay. The power efficiency jumped immediately. The readings stabilized at 2% better than before the problem started. Thrax stared at the numbers. You did not just fix the problem, you improved the system. The relay was the obvious problem, but while I was in there, I noticed you had some other inefficiencies. Small things. I fixed those too. Taman wiped sweat from his face. Hope that's okay. For the first time, Thrax's harsh expression softened slightly. It is acceptable. Vexthu returned to inspect the work. He studied the readings in silence. Then he looked at Taemin with an expression the human could not read. You have proven useful. Perhaps you can prove useful again. The warlord gestured to the guards. Return them to their cells. But give them better food, and allow them to speak with each other freely. It was not freedom, but it was better than execution. That night the human crew gathered in their cells and talked quietly. He's curious about us, Captain Donghyun said. That's good. Curious enemies don't kill you right away. But what happens when his curiosity runs out? Minyo asked. Then we make ourselves more useful. Taemin looked at his hands. They were sore from the unfamiliar tools. There's something else. When I was working, I noticed their technology is powerful but inflexible. They do things one way because that's how they've always done it. They don't experiment. They don't innovate. So they're traditional, Dr. Hana said. Very traditional. Which means they're not used to thinking creatively. That's our advantage. We adapt, we improvise. We find new solutions to old problems. Jiwoo, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. I saw injured Draxians today. Their medic was treating them, but the methods were crude. Focused on getting warriors back to battle, not on healing them properly. Could you do better? The captain asked. Maybe, if they let me try. Captain Donghyun thought for a long moment. We're not warriors. We can't fight our way out, but we're explorers, scientists, engineers. We know things they don't, and knowledge is power too. You want to teach them? Sujin sounded surprised. I want to survive, and the best way to survive is to become valuable. Too valuable to kill. The captain looked at each of them. We show them what humans can do. We solve their problems. We prove that cooperation works better than conquest. And if that doesn't work, Minyo asked, then at least we tried. At least we stayed true to who we are. In his private chambers, Vexthu sat alone with his thoughts. The humans confused him. They should be terrified. They should be broken. Instead, they worked. They smiled. They helped their captors improve their own ship. He had conquered countless species. Some fought with honor. Some begged for mercy. Some tried to bargain. But none had ever simply helped. None had ever looked at their captors and offered solutions instead of resistance. Krell entered without knocking. My lord, the crew is talking. They say the humans have strange powers, that they can see problems our sensors cannot detect. The human is just a skilled engineer, nothing more. Then why do you let them live? We have taken what we needed from their ship. We have learned what they know. They serve no purpose. Vexthu was quiet for a long time. I want to understand them. I want to know what makes creatures this weak brave enough to answer distress calls in hostile space. Bravery is for warriors. They are not warriors. No, Vexthu agreed. They are something else. Something I have never encountered before, and until I understand what that is, they live. Krell left, dissatisfied but obedient. Alone again, Vexthu looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, a world that produced these strange, soft creatures. 3 weeks passed. The humans were no longer kept in cells. They worked throughout the ship, always under guard, but with increasing freedom. What started as captivity slowly became something stranger, something unexpected. Taemin worked in engineering every day. His improvements to the power systems had saved enough energy to boost the ship's shield strength by 5%. Thrax, the chief engineer, no longer watched him with suspicion. Now they worked side by side, sharing ideas. You humans think sideways, Thrax said one morning. He meant it as an observation, not an insult. We see a problem, we apply more power. You see a problem, you change the approach. We have to, Taemin explained. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. So we have to be smarter. We have to find the path that uses less force but achieves the same goal. Is that why you came to help the colony? The smart path? Taemin paused his work. We came because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes the smart path and the right path are the same thing. Thrax made a rumbling sound deep in his chest. It might have been a laugh. Draxians respect strength. We do not understand help. We do not understand, right? Only victory and defeat. Maybe that's why you're so good at war. And so bad at peace. The comment should have been offensive. But Thrax only tilted his head, considering. You speak truth. We have conquered 17 systems, but we do not build. We do not create. We only take. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms. Red lights flashed throughout the engineering bay. Thrax's claws flew across the controls. Coolant failure in Reactor 3. We have minutes before it overheats. Other Draxian engineers rushed to their stations. But the problem was complex. Multiple systems had failed at once. This was not an accident. This was sabotage. Taimin's mind raced through the possibilities. Bypass the primary coolant line. Route everything through the secondary manifold. That manifold cannot handle full flow. It will burst. Not if we reduce reactor output first. Drop it to 60%, make the bypass, then slowly bring power back up. The manifold can handle that. Thrax hesitated. Reducing power meant lowering shields. Lowering shields during flight was dangerous, but the reactor would explode if they did nothing. Do it. Vexthu's voice boomed across the communication system. He had been listening. Draxian engineers worked frantically. Taimin guided them through the process, his hands steady despite the pressure. Captain Dong Hyun appeared with several crew members. Without being asked, they began helping, following Taimin's instructions. Jiwoo brought specialized medical equipment. If anyone gets burned by coolant, I can help. Dr. Hana monitored the reactor temperatures, calling out readings. Sujin helped translate technical terms between the Draxian engineers who spoke different dialects. Minhyo, despite having no engineering training, fetched tools and cleared pathways. 15 minutes of chaos. 15 minutes of humans and Draxians working together as a single team. Then the new coolant line engaged. The temperatures dropped. The crisis passed. In the sudden quiet, Taimin sagged against a wall. His shirt was soaked with sweat. Around him, Draxian engineers breathed heavily, their scales flushed dark with exertion. Thrax approached Captain Dong Hyun. Your crew saved this ship. Saved 8,000 Draxian lives. We saved ourselves too, she pointed out. We're on this ship, but you could have let us fail. Let the reactor explode. Died knowing you took your captors with you. Captain Dong Hyun met his eyes. That's not who we are. We don't kill people just because we can. Even enemies, the word hung in the air. Enemies. But after 3 weeks in a shared crisis, the word felt hollow. Wrong somehow. Vexthu arrived in engineering personally. His presence filled the room. Every Draxian immediately stood straighter, but Vexthu's attention focused on the humans. This was sabotage, he said quietly. Dangerously. Someone tried to destroy my ship, and my own crew saved it. He looked at Taimin. You especially, why? Because thousands would have died. Human and Draxian both. You owe us nothing. We captured you, imprisoned you, threatened you, yet you risk your life to save mine. Taimin wiped his face. On Earth we have a saying. The best way to make a friend is to save their life. We are not friends. No. But we're not enemies anymore either. I don't know what we are. Vexthu studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to his warriors. Find who did this. Bring them to me. It took only 2 hours. The saboteur was Krell. Vexthu's second-in-command had planted the failures. He had meant to destroy the ship and blame the humans. He had meant to prove that Vexthu was weak for keeping them alive. He had meant to restore traditional Draxian values through fire and death. Now Krell stood in chains before Vexthu in the main assembly hall. Hundreds of Draxian warriors watched. The humans were brought to witness as well. You betrayed your warlord, Vexthu said. His voice was ice. You betrayed your ship. You betrayed your warriors. Explain. Krell raised his head proudly. I betrayed nothing. You betrayed us. You betrayed the Draxian way. We are conquerors. We are warriors. But you let these soft creatures make you weak. You listen to them. You value them. You have forgotten what we are. Murmurs rippled through the assembled warriors. Some nodded agreement. The humans had changed things. Changed their warlord. Not everyone liked it. I have forgotten nothing, Vexthu said. I remember every battle. Every victory. Every world that fell before our might. Then why do you hesitate? Why do you not destroy these humans and continue our conquest? Because Vexthu paused. For a moment, he looked uncertain. Then his gaze found Taimin in the crowd. Because these humans have shown me something. They are weak, but they saved 8,000 warriors today. They have no weapons, but they made my ship stronger. They should fear us, but instead they talk to us. Work with us. Treat us as equals. They treat us as equals because you allow it. You have grown soft. Have I? Vexthu's voice dropped to a growl. Do you challenge me, Krell? This was the moment. In Draxian culture, any warrior could challenge their leader. Single combat. Winner led, loser died. It was the oldest tradition. I challenge you, Krell said. I fight for the old ways. For strength. For conquest. If I win, we kill the humans and return to the path of warriors. And if I win? Vexthu asked. Then you are truly our warlord, and I accept whatever you choose. The hall erupted in shouts. Warriors cheered for both sides. This was what they understood. Not complicated feelings about humans, not questions about right and wrong. Just strength against strength. Captain Donghyun pushed through the crowd to Vexthu. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. This is our way. Your way says the winner kills the loser. If you win, Krell dies. Yes, there's another option. She spoke quickly, quietly. You could change the terms. You could show strength without death. Vexthu looked at her like she was mad. Mercy is weakness, is it? You've conquered 17 systems by killing everyone who opposed you. But has any of those systems stayed loyal? Or do they all hate you and wait for a chance to rebel? The question struck home. Vexthu knew the answer. His empire was built on fear, and fear made for unreliable subjects. What do you suggest? He asked. Win the fight. Prove your strength. But don't kill Krell. Show everyone that true strength is choosing when to destroy and when to preserve. They will think me weak. Or they'll think you're wise. Strong enough to break tradition when tradition needs breaking. Vexthu considered this. Around him his warriors were preparing the combat circle. This would happen whether he was ready or not. He leaned close to Captain Donghyun. If this goes wrong, if they turn on me, you and your crew run. Find your ship and escape. We won't leave you. You must. You have shown me too much, taught me too much. Someone needs to carry that knowledge forward. Before she could respond, the warriors called for silence. The challenge had been made. The combat would begin. Vexthu and Krell entered the circle. Both removed their armor. Tradition for honor combat. Both carried only claws and teeth. This would be a battle of pure strength and skill. They circled each other. Krell was younger, faster, but Vexthu had 20 cycles of experience. He had fought countless battles and survived them all. Krell attacked first, a blur of claws aimed at Vexthu's throat. The warlord blocked, countered, forced Krell back. They traded blows that would have killed a human instantly. Blood sprayed from cuts and gashes. The watching Draxians roared. This was what they loved. Pure combat, pure strength. No tricks, no technology, just warrior against warrior. Taemin watched in horror. Humans did not fight like this. Humans did not celebrate violence this way, but he was beginning to understand Draxians. This was their language. This was how they spoke truth to each other. The battle raged for 20 minutes. Both warriors bled from dozens of wounds. Both began to slow, but Vexthu's experience showed. He was reading Krell's patterns, predicting his moves. Finally, Vexthu saw his opening. He ducked under a wild slash, came up inside Krell's guard and struck 3 precise blows. Krell fell to his knees, gasping. Vexthu's claws pressed against his throat. The hall fell silent. This was the moment. Tradition demanded death. Every eye watched to see what their warlord would do. Vexthu looked at Krell. Then he looked at the humans. Then he looked at his warriors. Krell challenged me because he thought I had grown weak, Vexthu said loudly. He thought mercy was weakness. The Bloodfang drifted in high orbit above Thalrosta 4. The planet glowed blue and green below. Home to 3 billion souls who did not yet know their fate hung in the balance. Taemin stood in the observation deck staring down at the world. In 2 hours, Vexthu would decide. Attack or negotiate, conquest or conversation. Everything the humans had tried to teach him would be tested today. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Hana joined him at the window. 3 billion people down there. Living their lives. Working, loving, dreaming. And they don't know a warlord is deciding whether they live or die. Vexthu has changed, Taemin said. He spared Krell. He listens to us now. Maybe he'll choose peace. Maybe. Or maybe he'll show that all our work meant nothing. That conquest is too deep in Draxian blood to overcome. They were not prisoners anymore. Over the past weeks, the humans had become something else. Advisors, guests, even they were not sure what to call their status. They moved freely through the ship now. Warriors nodded to them in the corridors. Some even asked their opinions. But freedom meant nothing if Vexthu chose war today. Captain Dong Hyun found them both. He's called a council meeting. He wants us there. The command center was packed with Draxian officers. Krell stood to one side, his expression unreadable. The wounds from his duel with Vexthu had healed, but his pride remained scarred. He watched the humans with eyes full of calculation. Vexthu sat in his command throne, studying holographic displays of Thalros IV. The planet's defenses were marked in red. They were substantial, but not enough to stop a Draxian fleet. A standard invasion would take 3 days. Casualties would be high on both sides. Report, Vexthu commanded. A tactical officer stepped forward. Thalros IV has a population of 3 billion. Their military consists of 200,000 soldiers and a defense fleet of 60 ships. They have planetary shields, but our weapons can breach them within 6 hours. We estimate total conquest within 3 days. Casualties? For us, perhaps 5,000 warriors. For them, civilian casualties would be between 50 and 80 million, depending on their resistance level. The numbers hung in the air. 50 million dead. Just another statistic in the long history of Draxian conquest. Vexthu had heard such numbers many times before. They had never bothered him, but now he hesitated. What resources does Thalros IV possess? He asked. Another officer answered. Rich agricultural production. Their farming technology is among the best in this sector. They also control major trade routes, and their computer systems are highly advanced. So they have things we need. Things we could take. Yes, my lord. Vexthu turned to Captain Dong Hyun. You have been quiet. Speak. She stepped forward, aware that every eye was on her. You're asking me what I think you should do? You are human. You came to help strangers. You saved my ship and crew. Your opinion has value. Captain Dong Hyun chose her words carefully. I think you're at a crossroads. You can attack Thalros IV and win. You can add it to your list of conquests. But in 3 days, you'll have another defeated world that hates you, another population that waits for you to show weakness so they can rebel. That is the way of conquest. It's the way you've always done things. But it doesn't have to be the only way. Krell spoke up, his voice sharp. She speaks of peace, of negotiation. Draxian warriors do not beg for what we can take by force. I'm not suggesting begging, Captain Dong Hyun said firmly. I'm suggesting a different kind of strength. You have military might. Thalros IV has agricultural technology and trade routes. Why destroy what you could instead share? The Draxian officers erupted in argument. Some called the idea madness. Others looked thoughtful. The debate raged until Vexthu raised his hand for silence. Explain what you mean by share. Captain Dong Hyun took a breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on making him understand. On Earth, we have a concept called alliance. Instead of conquering people, you offer them protection in exchange for cooperation. Thalros IV gives you access to their agricultural technology and trade routes. You give them protection from pirates, raiders, and other threats. Both sides benefit. Both sides grow stronger. And if they refuse, then you haven't lost anything. You can still attack. But at least you tried. At least you gave them a choice. Vexthu was silent for a long time. His clawed fingers drummed on the arm of his throne. Around him, his officers waited. The humans barely dared to breathe. Finally, the Warlord spoke. Open a communication channel to Thalros IV. Shocked whispers filled the room. Krell's face darkened with anger. But no one dared disobey. The view screen flickered to life. A Thalrosian appeared. They were shorter than Draxians, but taller than humans, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. This one wore formal robes marking him as a government official. I am Warlord Vexthu of the Draxian Empire, Vexthu said. His voice carried its usual authority, but for the first time it did not carry a threat. I have come to your world with a fleet. You know what that means? You have seen what I do to worlds I conquer. The Thalrosian's face showed fear, but also defiance. We are prepared to defend ourselves. You would lose. Your defenses are adequate, but mine are superior. I could break your shields and occupy your world within 3 days. Then why are you talking to us instead of attacking? Good question. Vexthu glanced at Captain Dong Hyun, then back at the screen. Because I have been advised to consider alternatives. My advisors suggest that conquest is not the only path to strength. The Thalrosian blinked in confusion. Your advisors? Vexthu gestured. Captain Donghyun stepped into view of the screen. I'm Captain Donghyun, representing Earth. We're a neutral party. We've been helping Warlord Vexthu see that cooperation can be more valuable than conquest. You're helping a warlord? The Thalrosian looked incredulous. Why? Because everyone deserves a chance to change. Even conquerors. She looked at Vexthu, especially conquerors. The negotiation lasted 4 hours. The Thalrosian government was suspicious, terrified, and uncertain. They had never imagined a Draxian warlord would negotiate. But Vexthu laid out terms that, while harsh, were not destructive. Thalros IV would join what Vexthu called the Kelthera Union. They would share their agricultural technology and grant trade route access. In exchange, the Draxian fleet would protect them from external threats. Both sides would exchange scientific knowledge. No occupation, no subjugation. Partnership. It was a strange word in Vexthu's mouth. Partnership. But he spoke it. Not all Thalrosians agreed. Not all Draxians agreed either. But enough on both sides saw the value, saw that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way. The agreement was signed at midnight, ship time. Vexthu stood alone in his quarters afterward, staring at the document on his screen. His first treaty, his first alliance, his first conquest without conquest. A chime at his door. Taemin entered when called. I wanted to thank you, the engineer said. What you did today was brave. Harder than any battle. It felt like weakness, Vexthu admitted. My warriors are confused. Some are angry. Krell nearly challenged me again, but you did it anyway. That's not weakness. That's strength. Vexthu looked at this small human who had changed everything. Why? Why do you care what happens to worlds you've never seen? People you've never met? Taemin thought about the question. Because we're all connected. All of us, everywhere. What happens to Thalros IV affects the whole sector. If you conquer them, that affects everyone. If you make peace with them, that also affects everyone. Maybe in better ways. Your species thinks too much about others. On Draxa, we think only of ourselves. Of our strength. Our glory. And where has that gotten you? You've conquered 17 systems. But do any of them actually like you? Trust you? Or do they just fear you? The question cut deep. Vexthu had never considered it before. He was a warlord. Being feared was the point. But now, the humans will leave soon, he said quietly. You have been my prisoners for 5 weeks. I will return you to your ship and your freedom. That was always my intent eventually. Was it? Taemin smiled slightly. I wasn't sure. Neither was I, Vexthu admitted. But you have given me much to think about. You have shown me things I did not know existed. I owe you a debt. You don't owe us anything. We helped because that's what we do. But I have a request. Name it. Don't stop here. What you did today with Thalros IV, do it again. With other worlds. Build this union. Show the galaxy that Draxians can be more than conquerors, that you can be protectors, builders, leaders. Vexthu's laugh was bitter. You ask me to change the nature of my entire species. I'm asking you to show them they have a choice. That's all. The rest is up to them. The warlord studied Taemin for a long moment. Then he reached out and placed one massive clawed hand on the human's shoulder. It was a gesture of respect. Of friendship, even. You are very small, Vexthu said. Your species is weak. Your ship has no weapons, but you have changed the course of empires. How is that possible? Because strength isn't just about size or weapons. It's about ideas, compassion, hope. Those things are stronger than any ship, any weapon, any army. I am not sure I believe that, but I want to. And that alone is a victory you have won. The next morning, the human crew prepared to leave. The Draxians had repaired the horizon's edge and even upgraded some systems. It was an apology in their own way. 5 years had passed since the horizon's edge left the Bloodfang. 5 years of exploration, of discoveries, of new worlds and new friends. The crew had changed in small ways. Captain Donghyun's hair had gone completely gray. Taemin had a few more scars from engine repairs gone wrong. Dr. Hana had written 3 books on xenobiology. Minho was no longer the youngest on the crew, but some things never changed. They still answered distress calls. They still helped strangers. They still believed the galaxy was better when people worked together instead of fought. Today they orbited a beautiful nebula, studying its unusual radiation patterns. Peaceful work, the kind they loved. Captain, we're receiving a transmission. Sujin said from the communications station. Her skills had grown sharper over the years. She could now speak 17 alien languages. It's using Draxian encryption codes. Everyone on the bridge looked up at that. It had been 5 years since they had heard from Vexthu or his fleet. They had wondered often what happened. Did the Kelthera Union survive? Did Vexthu keep trying to negotiate instead of conquer, or did he return to his old ways? Put it through, Captain Donghyun said. The view screen flickered. Vexthu appeared and the crew gasped. He looked older. New scars crossed his red scales. But his eyes were different, calmer, less angry, more at peace. Captain Donghyun, it has been many cycles. I hope this message finds you well. Vexthu. The captain smiled. It's good to see you. We've wondered about you. And I have thought of you often. Your lessons have been valuable. He shifted, looking almost uncomfortable. I require your assistance once more. If you are willing. What kind of assistance? The Kelthera Union has grown. 12 species have joined. But a new species wishes to enter negotiations. They are suspicious of Draxians, understandably. They request a neutral mediator. Someone they can trust. I thought of you. Taemin leaned forward. 12 species? You've brought 12 species into the Union? 13 if these negotiations succeed. It has not been easy. Many Draxians resist. Some have left my fleet to continue the old ways of conquest. But enough remain. Enough believe that strength can build as well as destroy. Dr. Hana spoke up. What species wants to join? The Veron. They are a peaceful people. Artists, philosophers, scientists. They have no military. They have been raided by pirates for years. They seek protection but fear that protection means subjugation. And you need us to convince them you've changed, Captain Donghyun said. I need you to tell them the truth, that I am trying to change, that the Kelthera Union is real, that Draxians can be trusted, at least some of us. Vexthu's expression was earnest. Please, I know I have no right to ask. But you started this. Help me continue it. The crew looked at each other. Silent conversation passed between them. They had moved on with their lives. They had other missions, other duties. Going back meant weeks of travel, but this was important. This was the future they had hoped for. Send us the coordinates, Captain Donghyun said. We're on our way. The journey took 3 weeks at maximum speed. As they approached the rendezvous point, they saw something that made them stare in wonder. The Bloodfang was there, but it was not alone. Surrounding it were ships from a dozen different species. Each vessel was unique, reflecting the culture that built it. Together they formed a fleet more diverse than any the humans had ever seen. That's the Kelthera Union fleet. Sujin breathed. He actually did it. Minho piloted the Horizon's Edge toward the Bloodfang. The docking procedures were familiar, like coming home after a long absence. When they entered the ship, Draxian warriors greeted them not as prisoners but as honored guests. Thrax met them in the docking bay. The old engineer looked pleased to see them. Human Taemin, the power systems you designed are still running at peak efficiency. Good to hear. How have you been, Thrax? Busy. Building instead of destroying is much more complicated. But he smiled when he said it. Vexthu received them in what used to be his throne room. But it had changed. Where once there had been weapons and trophies of conquest, now there were diplomatic seals and alliance agreements. The throne remained, but it looked less like a seat of war and more like a seat of leadership. Welcome back, Vexthu said. He stood to greet them, a sign of respect he never would have shown 5 years ago. Thank you for coming. Captain Donghyun looked around the transformed room. You've made changes, many changes, some good, some difficult, but necessary. He gestured to the seals on the walls. 12 species. 12 different ways of thinking. 12 different needs and fears. Bringing them together has been the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than conquest? Taemin asked. Much harder. In battle, there is a winner and a loser, simple, clean. But in negotiation, everyone must win a little and lose a little. Finding that balance is an art I am still learning. A new figure entered the room. A Varan slender and graceful with skin that shimmered like pearl. This was Ambassador Kira, representing her people in the negotiations. These are the humans? She asked. Her voice was musical, gentle. Yes. Captain Donghyun and her crew. They taught me that there was another way beyond conquest. Kira studied them carefully. You are very small. We get that a lot, Minho said with a grin. Over the next hours, the humans learned about the Veron. They were indeed peaceful, Their entire culture was built around art, music, and philosophy. They had no weapons, no armies, no concept of war. We have been raided 17 times in the past 5 years, Kira explained. Pirates steal our art, our technology, our people. We cannot defend ourselves. We need protection. And you're afraid Vexthu will become just another kind of pirate, Dr. Hana said gently. Yes. How do we know this union is different? How do we know we won't trade one threat for another? Captain Donghyun shared their story. How they had been captured, imprisoned, threatened. How they had chosen to help instead of resist. How Vexthu had slowly changed, learning that strength could build instead of destroy. He's not perfect, she admitted. He still thinks like a warrior sometimes. He still struggles with patience and diplomacy. But he's trying. Really trying. And that counts for something. Taimin added technical details about the union's structure, how each species maintained autonomy, how decisions were made collectively, how the Draxian fleet protected everyone but ruled no one. Jiwoo talked about the medical exchanges, how different species shared knowledge to help each other. Sujin explained the universal translation protocols that let everyone communicate. Minyo described the joint training exercises that built trust between species. Kira listened to it all, her expression thoughtful. You truly believe this union is real? That Vexthu has changed? We've seen it, Captain Donghyun said. We've lived it. 5 years ago he would have conquered your world without a second thought. Now he's asking for your consent, your partnership. That's not nothing. But can it last? What happens when Vexthu is gone? Do the Draxians return to their old ways? It was a good question. One the humans had asked themselves many times. Vexthu answered it himself. I do not know. I'm trying to change not just myself but my entire species. That takes time, generations perhaps. But I have begun teaching young Draxians a different way. They are learning diplomacy alongside combat, learning to build alongside destroy. Some resist, but others embrace it. He pulled up a holographic display. It showed a school. Young Draxians learning from teachers of different species, studying art, science, philosophy alongside traditional warrior training. The future of the Draxian people will be different from our past, not because I command it, but because they are learning there is more to strength than violence. Kira watched the display in silence. Then she looked at the humans again. Will you stay? During the negotiations? Help us understand if this is real? Of course, Captain Donghyun said. The negotiations took 2 weeks. They were difficult, tense, and often frustrating. The Veron wanted guarantees. The Draxians wanted respect for their military traditions. Other Union members had their own concerns and opinions. But slowly, painfully, agreement emerged. The Veron would join the Kelthara Union. They would share their art and philosophy, enriching the culture of all member species. In exchange, the Draxian fleet would protect them from pirates and raiders. When the treaty was finally signed, there was no great celebration. Just quiet satisfaction. One more species choosing cooperation over isolation. One more step toward a better future. On the last night before the humans departed, Vexthu invited them to a private dinner. It was strange, seeing the fierce warlord trying to be a gracious host. He was not good at it, but he tried. I wanted to thank you, he said. Again, always, you changed my life. Changed my empire. Changed me. You changed yourself, Captain Donghyun said. We just showed you it was possible. Is this what you imagined? When you first answered that distress call 5 years ago, did you know it would lead to this? The captain laughed. Absolutely not. We thought we were rescuing a mining colony. We had no idea we'd end up teaching a warlord philosophy. What will you do now? Vexthu asked. Continue exploring? That's what we do. We explore, we learn, we help where we can, same as always. Taemin looked at the warlord who had become a friend. What about you? What's next for the Kelthara Union? Growth, slowly, carefully.